Section 12 of Chris and the Wonderful Lamp. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Donald Warren. Chris and the Wonderful Lamp by Albert Stearns, in which the genie makes a discovery and profits by it. "Hello, Chris," said the genie, as his master entered. "How did my work strike you? I venture to say you never saw anything like it in these parts, but I've only begun. Wait till you see the second part." "See here," interrupted Chris, "you've got to give up that idea of transporting this place to the Sandwich Islands." "I've got to give up what?" shrieked the genie. "Why, that's the best thing I do. Transporting houses from one place to another has been my specialty for generations. Give it up? But of course you're joking." "No, I'm not joking," said Chris in a very decided tone. "I order you not to do it, and that settles it." The slave of the lamp seated himself very deliberately and fixed his eyes upon Chris's face. He was evidently making a strong effort to be calm. "I might have expected this," he said in a hard metallic voice. "I ought to have expected it, but I didn't. So just as I am getting warmed up to my work, just as I am beginning to enjoy myself, you think it's necessary to step in and knock everything on the head. Very well, very well. It's your turn now." And the genie gave his master an unpleasantly suggestive look. "I'm not going to knock anything on the head," said Chris in a half-conciliatory tone. "I only want you to omit one trick. I don't suppose you have taken the trouble to consider what an embarrassing position this freak of yours places me in with the audience," said the genie. "Of course you haven't." "I don't see anything so embarrassing about it," returned the boy. "All you have to do is to make a little apology, say that you find yourself unable to perform the trick." "I'll do it," said the genie doggedly. "It will be the first apology I ever made in my life, but it won't be the first falsehood I have told for you." "Never mind that," said Chris, flushing. "Another thing," he added quickly. "I thought I told you to play some sort of trick on Mrs. Storms." "So you did. I haven't forgotten it. Do you know what I was going to do? I intended to drop her out of one of the windows when we reached the Sandwich Islands and let her get home the best way she could." "Ha, ha, ha. Well, what do you think of that? All wrong, I suppose." "Of course it is," replied Chris promptly. "Oh, certainly it is," added the genie with bitter sarcasm. "Well, what sort of trick do you want me to play on her?" "I don't know," hesitated the boy. "I can't think of one just at this minute." "Then suppose we let the old lady alone," said his slave. "I think she suffers enough in having to sit in the same row with you." "See here," began Chris angrily, but the genie interrupted him. "The overture is almost finished. Please let me know on what lines you desire me to conduct the remainder of this performance. I want it to be just an ordinary sleight of hand show, such as usually comes to this place," replied Chris. "It isn't safe to leave you to your own devices." "Very good. Your wishes shall be carried out to the letter." "To the letter, sir." And the genie turned abruptly and walked upon the stage, from which all the animals had disappeared. Then Chris heard him say, "Ladies and gentlemen, owing to circumstances beyond my control, I am unable to transport this hall to the Sandwich Islands tonight. I shall now proceed to pull a half-starved rabbit from under a gentleman's coat and perform a few other of the class of tricks to which you are used." Chris hurried back to his seat, relieved yet angry. The remainder of the entertainment was a flat failure. All the tricks performed by the genie had been seen in Lincolnville many times before, and he did them in the most clumsy manner, intentionally, as Chris, but Chris only, knew. The audience passed by rapid stages from enthusiasm to indifference, and from indifference to contempt, and when the curtain fell, several hisses were heard. "Well," said Mrs. Storms as they left the hall, "it's just as I said it would be. This is the last show I'll ever go to. And where's Professor Turner? Nowhere to be seen. There's no carriage, and it's raining. I suppose we'll have to walk home." They did have to, and reached the green homestead very wet and in an exceedingly bad humor. Chris, angry and disgusted, went to bed at once. He did not see his cousin again until the next morning, when he was ready to start for home. Then Bob suddenly appeared, and said in a frightened sort of way, "I'm going to the train with you. We may as well walk, I guess." "That'll suit me," said Chris, who saw that Bob had heard the story of his insanity and was in fear that he might at any moment become violent. He entered into no explanations, being quite tired of the subject and reflecting that his cousin would learn the truth very soon. But as he was about to step into his car, he said, "You'll know that I didn't sell that ball game before long, Bob, and you'll hear some other things that'll surprise you a good deal." "All right, goodbye," was Bob's short response, and as the train started, he ran off at the top of his speed, not stopping to wave his hand as usual. Chris's father was out when he reached home. His mother greeted him with an exclamation of dismay. "Don't worry, Mother," he said cheerfully. "I came home because they didn't want me to stay any longer. This letter will tell you all about it." When Mrs. Wagstaff had read her sister's letter, she looked even more distressed than before. "Oh dear, what is to be done?" she exclaimed distractedly. Chris guessed the contents of the letter. He learned long afterward that his surmises were correct, and that Mrs. Green had expressed a firm conviction that he was incurably insane. And he said earnestly, "Now you mustn't fret, Mother. Everything will be all right this very afternoon. I know what I'm talking about. I'm going to astonish the natives." "Oh, Chris, my dear boy, what are you going to do?" "I'm not going to hurt anybody, Mother," said the boy, with an annoyed laugh that the very words by which he had hoped to soothe her should add to her anxiety. "You'll laugh to think how you've worried when you know the truth." And he hurried away to escape further questioning. That afternoon, the wonderful lamp carefully wrapped in paper under his arm, Chris started for the Dusenberry Academy. When the boys came trooping out at 3 o'clock, they found him loitering outside the gate, a complacent, almost condescending smile on his lips. "Hello," cried Nate Marston. "Back, are you? Well, you did some great playing yesterday, but why didn't you keep it up? The Lincolnville fellows saw me talking to you, and they say I sold the game," said Chris. "They do? Well, I'll send in a letter that will knock that idea out of their heads." "Say, Chris," interrupted Fred Tobin with a laugh, "who was that old fellow you got to help you off the other day? I'd like to hire him by the week to do the same kind of work for me." "Fellows," said Chris, with an air of deep mystery, "there are a good many things you don't understand that will be made clear before night." "Wish you could make my geometry lesson clear," said Scotty Jones with a grin, "but I guess it would take more than you to do that." "I could do it in a minute if I wanted to," replied Chris, "but just now I have other work on hand." "What are you driving at anyway, Chris?" asked Will Bent. "See here, boys," said Chris to the group that had gathered around him, "what would you say if I told you that it was in my power to fly like a bird?" "I should say you were talking through your hat," laughed Scotty. "Well, it's a fact that I can do it," maintained Chris, "and I'm going to prove it. I'll go up to the top of the Methodist church steeple and fly down. When you see that, you'll believe I knew what I was talking about, won't you? It ought to be enough to convince you." "Yes," replied Nate, "but I'd rather see you fly up to the top of the steeple." "Can't you do that?" "I could, and I will later on," said Chris, "but I'll begin the other way. Come on, boys," and he started in the direction of the Methodist church. "See here, Chris," interposed Scotty, "this is only one of your tricks, and we ain't going to let you drag us over to the church. It's out of our way. We're all going over to Sims's pond." "Fellows," cried Chris, "I mean every word I've said. That's honest. You come down to the church with me and stand over by Jenkins's barn. I'll go up in the steeple alone, and inside of 5 minutes you'll see me flying down. After that, we'll all have a big lunch on the parade ground. Lobster salad, ice cream, and whatever else you want." The boys roared with laughter at this, and Scotty said, "You're a great fellow, Chris, but you can't work this game on us. Come on, fellows, let's be off for the pond. You'd better come along too, Chris." But several of the members of the group were somewhat impressed by Chris's evident earnestness, and one of them, Will Brent, said, "Oh, let's go and see what the trick is anyway. If there's any ice cream laying around loose in the parade ground, I don't mind helping to get rid of it. Come ahead." This decided the question. The boys all started for the church, Chris leading the way. "You fellows think I'm trying to fool you," he said, "but you're very much mistaken, as you'll soon find out. If you don't open your eyes wider than you ever did before in your lives within the next 15 minutes, my name is not Chris Wagstaff." "Have you invented a flying machine?" asked Nate. "You'll see," was the only reply Chris vouchsafed. The sexton happened to be in the Methodist church, and he readily accorded the boy permission to ascend to the belfry. The new brick Methodist church, with its stained glass windows and its tall tapering spire, was the pride of South Dusenbury. The spire was the highest in the county, and was visible for many miles. Chris thought there could not be a better place from which to start on the flying expedition, for which he expected the genie to provide him wings. As he started up the winding stairway that reached almost to the extreme apex of the spire, the boys, none of whom he would permit to accompany him, left the building, crossed the road, and took their places near Seth Jenkins's barn, where they were joined by others of the village lads, curious to know what was going on. "What do you suppose Chris is up to, anyway?" asked Scotty. "He can't have invented a flying machine." "Maybe he has," said Nate. "Perhaps it was in that bundle he had under his arm." "I'll tell you what I think," said Will. "I don't believe he's quite right in the upper story. Dr. Ingalls was at our house this morning, and my mother says he hinted something of the sort. Said Chris had been studying too hard lately and had got to take a rest. I laughed at the idea when my mother told me, but I begin to think there's something in it." "No, there isn't either," said Scotty very decidedly. "Chris Wagstaff will never hurt himself by overwork if he lives to be 100. It's only a trick of his on his folks and the doctor to get out of going to school, and he's making ready to play another trick on us now." "Why doesn't he appear with his flying machine, if he has one?" said Nate. "He's had time to climb a steeple twice as high as that one. Ah, there he is at the window now." Chris's program for the afternoon had included a wonderful exhibition of flying, followed by an elaborate luncheon on the parade ground. After the meal he intended to undertake the erection of a new and magnificent town hall and possibly an opera house, both of which it was his magnanimous intention to present to the village. His face flushed as much by pleasurable anticipation of the wonders he was about to work with the genie's aid as by his run up the spiral stairway. He paused, panting, in the belfry. "Now then," he exclaimed aloud as he had recovered his breath, "to business." He tore the paper wrappings from the lamp and gave it a vigorous rub. To his amazement and consternation, the genie did not appear. "Perhaps he's asleep," reflected Chris, remembering several occasions recorded in the Arabian Nights on which genie had been caught napping. "If he is, I'll soon wake him up." Again he rubbed the lamp, and again, but in vain. The genie did not respond to the summons. A cold perspiration broke out on Chris's brow. A strange sick feeling oppressed him. Had the lamp, after retaining its wondrous power so many centuries, now suddenly lost it? Was it possible that the genie had renounced his allegiance to the bit of bric-a-brac that he had regarded for ages with fear and awe? "Perhaps he won't come because it's a church," said Chris to himself. "I shouldn't wonder if that was it. He's a heathen spirit, a sort of demon, I guess. Well, there's no help for it. I shall have to give it up for this time. I hate to go down to the fellows. How they will laugh at me." He stepped to the window and by gestures conveyed the information to the boys that the exhibition he had promised them would not take place. Then he began slowly descending the stairs, a much crestfallen and greatly troubled boy. Meanwhile, the group at Seth Jenkins's barn were commenting upon his extraordinary conduct. Will Bent's theory that he was not quite right in the upper story had already found acceptance, and when the luckless owner of the lamp appeared and advanced toward the boys, they regarded him in a manner that told them at once what was passing in their minds. Why didn't you fly?" asked Scotty. "Wouldn't your great invention work?" Chris shook his head with a sickly smile. "And how about that big layout on the parade ground?" inquired Nate. "It will have to be postponed," replied Aladdin's wretched successor. The boys stared at him in silence a few moments. Then Scotty broke out with, "Come on, fellows, let's be off for Sims's pond, and pay no further attention to Chris." They started at a run. "They think I'm crazy too," murmured the boy, who began to feel that he was becoming a pariah among his companions. Well, I don't blame them, but maybe now that I'm out of the church, the genie will show himself. He rubbed the lamp with a trembling hand, but the erratic spirit did not materialize. So downcast and miserable did Chris appear when he reached home that his mother's anxiety in his behalf became greater than ever. She made a large dish of milk toast for his supper and put a jar of his favorite raspberry jam beside his plate, but he ate very little and went to his room immediately after supper. Seated by the window, the lamp on the table by his side, he abandoned himself to melancholy reflection. The experience of the late Aladdin, so far as recorded in the Arabian Nights, furnished no parallel to his own. Chris felt that the genie had treated him badly, and in a sudden burst of indignation he seized the lamp and rubbed it fiercely, crying, "He must come, he shall! Ah, you're here at last, are you?" For the genie stood before him, this time in the same form in which he had appeared on the occasion of their first meeting. "Yes, I am here," replied the spirit, in a cold, hard tone that Chris did not half like. "Why didn't you come before?" demanded the angry boy. "Have you any idea what a scrape you got me into?" "One question at a time, please," said the genie, in the same icy tone and with a cynical smile. "I didn't come before because, not to put too fine a point on it, I didn't feel like it. As for the scrape you're in, that's no affair of mine." "No affair of yours?" gasped Chris. "Aren't you my slave and the slave of the lamp?" "Your slave?" sneered the genie. "The slave of an old pewter lamp in such a bad state of repair that it would be utterly impossible to light it? I am not. I acknowledge with deep humiliation that I was, but I am not now." "But you are!" almost shrieked Chris. "You can't help yourself. You are, and you always will be." "I am not, nor shall I ever be again," returned the spirit. "So you needn't waste any more time and vitality in rubbing the old lamp. I responded to the summons this time only to explain the situation to you." "But you haven't explained anything," cried the boy. "If it had been in your power to rebel, you'd have done it when Aladdin owned the lamp. You can't do it. You know you can't." "It wasn't in my power then," said the genie, "but it is now. Just glance at this." And he suddenly produced a printed paper and held it before Chris's eyes. "Why, it's the Emancipation Proclamation," the youth exclaimed. "That's precisely what it is," replied his companion, an exultant ring in his voice. "I accidentally learned of its existence only this morning. By its provisions, slavery is abolished in the United States. Isn't that so?" I suppose it is," faltered Chris, "but it doesn't apply to you." "I fail to see that any exceptions or reservations which could possibly affect the present case are made," said the genie, "and I have studied the document pretty carefully. No, my friend, I am no longer your slave, and as for that thing—" He did not finish the sentence, but suddenly raising his foot, he gave the lamp, which was the object to which he had referred so contemptuously, a vicious kick which sent it out the window, and then he began to fade away. "Wait a minute," entreated the boy. "Just a second, But the genie was gone. Chris rushed frantically downstairs and began a search for the lamp, which he very soon found. He rubbed it, but no genie appeared. As he dejectedly re-entered the house, his mother met him, and folding him in her arms said, "Chris, you always wanted to go to New York, and now you're going. I've been talking to Pa about it, and you and he are going to start tomorrow morning and stay a week. I'm sure that when you come back, you won't know yourself." "I don't now, Mother," said poor Chris sadly. "Of course you don't," replied his mother. "But won't you be glad to go to the city?" "Yes, indeed I shall. Anywhere to get away from South Dusenberry and the fellows for a few days." The next morning, Chris and his father started for New York. When they returned a week later, Dr. Ingalls pronounced the boy cured. But it was a long time before he gained the esteem and confidence of his schoolmates. One day he sought consolation and sympathy from Will Bent, the only person beside himself who had seen the palace on Chadwick's Acre. He had determined to tell him the whole story. But Will cut him short with, "I don't want to hear anything more about that, Chris Wagstaff. I told my folks all about what I thought I saw, and I talked so much on the subject that they sent for Dr. Ingalls. He said it was all my imagination, and that there seemed to be an epidemic of that sort of thing among the Dusenberry Academy boys, and I've been taking medicine for it ever since. I got the idea out of my head now, and I don't want you to put it back." "That settles it," snapped Chris, and thenceforth he kept his own counsel. The wonderful lamp, wonderful no longer, stands on the parlor mantel, and lovers of the antique occasionally go into raptures over it. Once in a while Chris steals in and gives it a sly rub, but the result is only disappointment. End of section 12. End of Chris and the Wonderful Lamp by Albert Stearns.